The $80,000 Patek Philippe watch caught the light as Marcus Sterling's wrist moved dismissively across his mahogany desk. The 62nd floor of Sterling Dynamics Tower stretched above downtown Chicago like a monument to his own brilliance. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city sprawling below tiny cars and tinier people who meant nothing to a man worth $3 billion. "Send them up," Marcus said into the gold-plated intercom, his voice carrying the casual cruelty of someone who had never been told no. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper. Sharon Washington entered first, pushing a cleaning cart loaded with supplies, her Navy uniform pressed and spotless, despite working 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Beside her walked 12-year-old Maya Washington, thin and alert, wearing a worn but clean school backpack and shoes polished to a mirror shine. Maya's dark eyes swept the office in seconds, taking in the Persian rugs worth more than her family's annual income, the paintings that could buy entire city blocks, the marble sculptures positioned like sentries around a throne room designed to make visitors feel small. Marcus circled them like a predator sensing weakness. His Italian leather shoes made no sound on the thick carpet as he studied the cleaning woman and her daughter with the detached interest of someone examining insects. "Sharon," he said, her name rolling off his tongue like something distasteful. 8 years you've been scrubbing my toilets. What's your education level again?" "High school diploma, sir," Sharon replied quietly, her eyes fixed on the floor. Marcus let out a harsh laugh that echoed off the marble walls. "Just high school. Figures." His gaze shifted to Maya, and his smile turned predatory. "And this must be the little colored girl who thinks she's going somewhere in life." The words hit like slaps, casual and calculated. Maya felt her mother's hand tighten on the cart handle, watched her shoulders curve inward like she was trying to disappear. For 8 years, Sharon had survived in this building by making herself invisible, by swallowing every insult, every dismissive glance, every reminder that she was nothing more than furniture to people like Marcus Sterling. But today was different. Today her daughter was watching. Marcus walked to his desk and picked up a leather portfolio, fanning out yellowed pages like a magician preparing a trick. "Let's have some fun," he announced. "I just acquired this at auction. Cost me more than your mother makes in 5 years. It's an ancient manuscript that 5 of the city's top translators couldn't crack. They called it impossible." He held up the pages, each covered in flowing scripts that seemed to dance in different directions. Classical Chinese, ancient Arabic, Sanskrit, medieval Hebrew, Persian, Latin. Each section in a different dead language. Marcus's eyes glittered with malicious amusement as he looked at Maya. "Tell me, little girl, what do you think it says? Take your best guess." Maya stepped closer, her worn sneakers silent on the expensive carpet. She studied the manuscript without rushing, her young face serious and focused. The ancient words seemed familiar, like old friends speaking across centuries. "You said 5 translators couldn't read it," Maya said finally, her voice clear and steady. "Can you—" Marcus blinked, caught off guard. "I'm a businessman, not some academic." "Then you can't read it either," Maya replied without missing a beat. "Yet you're mocking others for not being able to. Money isn't proof of intelligence, Mr. Sterling." The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the whisper of climate control and the distant hum of Chicago traffic 60 floors below. Marcus's face flushed red, his carefully maintained composure cracking like ice under pressure. "Did public school teach you to talk back like that?" He snapped, his voice rising. "A poor black kid claiming she can read what PhDs with decades of experience couldn't stop deluding yourself." Maya didn't flinch. She looked directly into his eyes, and when she spoke, her voice carried a quiet confidence that made the air in the room shift. "I speak 9 languages fluently," she said as if stating the weather. "If you want, I'll prove it." Marcus's laugh was forced, now brittle around the edges. 9 languages, a black public school girl. That's the most ridiculous thing I've heard today. Spanish, my native language. Maya began counting on her fingers. English, obviously. Mandarin Chinese, Arabic, French, Portuguese, Italian, German, and Russian. I can also read Latin, but I don't count that since it's dead. Each language name was pronounced perfectly, her pronunciation crisp and confident. Marcus's laughter died in his throat. "Proof," he demanded, his voice quieter now, uncertain. Maya's expression didn't change. The Chicago Public Library offers free language classes after school. Mrs. Chen teaches Mandarin on Tuesdays. She was a literature professor in Beijing before she came here. Now she works at a grocery store and volunteers at night. Mr. Hassan teaches Arabic on Thursdays. He was a university professor in Damascus. Now he drives for Uber. She paused, letting each word land like a stone in still water. They're not rich, but they're rich in knowledge. I learned from books, apps, online videos, and people who are willing to teach a kid who asks the right questions. Anyone can learn if they're given respect and opportunity. Sharon's grip on the cleaning cart loosened slightly. For the first time in years, she saw her daughter not as a burden or a liability, but as someone extraordinary, who had somehow grown from the soil of their struggles. Marcus glanced at the manuscript again, his confidence wavering like a candle in wind. The yellowed pages seemed to mock him now, filled with secrets he could buy but never understand. "Go on, then," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Prove it." Maya took a deep breath and placed her hands gently on the ancient paper. When she began to read, the entire atmosphere of the room changed. Classical Chinese flowed from her lips like water over stones, each syllable clear and precise. Then ancient Arabic melodic and haunting, followed by Sanskrit with its complex rhythms. Hebrew, Persian, and medieval Latin followed in perfect succession, each language distinct yet flowing seamlessly into the next. Marcus Sterling's jaw dropped open. In all his years of wielding power, of buying and selling companies like toys, of crushing competitors and silencing critics, he had never witnessed anything like this. Not the brutal force of wealth, but the quiet wings of knowledge lifting a child above everything he thought he understood about the world. Sharon's hand rose to her chest, her eyes filling with tears. Her daughter, the child who did homework under a flickering kitchen light, who wore hand-me-down clothes and carried a backpack held together with duct tape, was speaking to the world from heights Sharon had never dared to imagine. When Maya finished reading, she looked up at Marcus with those same steady eyes. "Shall I translate the meaning for you?" Marcus found himself nodding, not from arrogance this time, but from a part of himself he'd forgotten existed. A part that was curious instead of cruel. The manuscript is about the nature of wisdom and wealth. Maya began, her voice filling the massive office. True wisdom isn't found in golden towers, but in humble hearts. True wealth isn't counted in money, but in the ability to see dignity in every person. True power doesn't humiliate others, it lifts them up. She paused, watching Marcus's face as the words sank in. The text says that whoever thinks they're above others because of money is the poorest of all, because they've lost the ability to see light in others. Whoever uses power to hurt others is weak, because they need others to shrink just to feel tall themselves. Marcus pressed his palms against the cold marble of his desk. The surface that once gave him comfort now felt like ice against his skin. Every word Maya spoke was a mirror held up to his soul, reflecting back decades of cruelty he'd justified as business. "There's more," Maya continued. "The manuscript uses a river to describe language. Water changes color and taste as it flows through different lands, but it remains water. People change skin color, jobs, bank accounts, but they remain human. Their dignity doesn't change." She looked directly at Marcus as she said the word dignity, and he felt something crack inside his chest. "The final layer is about choice," Maya said, placing her hand on the last page. "When the powerful realize they've been blind to the wisdom around them, that's the moment they either awaken or condemn themselves to remain in darkness forever." The word condemn hit Marcus like a physical blow. He looked around his office at the expensive paintings and crystal sculptures, the leather chairs, and imported marble. For the first time, it all looked like a beautiful prison golden handcuffs he'd welded onto his own wrists. He turned to Sharon, really seeing her for the first time in 8 years. Not the uniform, not the job title, but the face of a mother who had stood through countless sleepless nights, who had raised a daughter capable of moving mountains with words while cleaning other people's messes to survive. "I was wrong," Marcus whispered the words, feeling foreign in his mouth. But Maya held up her hand. I have 3 conditions. If you truly learned something today, fulfilling them will make your apology real. Marcus nodded, understanding that power had shifted in this room. The person in control was no longer the man behind the marble desk, but the girl standing beside the ancient manuscript, her hands steady and unshaken. First, Maya said, raising one finger, you apologize to my mother not just for today, but for 8 years of treating her like she was invisible. Say her full name. Look her in the eyes when you do. Marcus turned to face Sharon directly. Sharon Washington. He said slowly, each syllable deliberate. I'm sorry for not seeing you as a person. I'm sorry for humiliating you in front of your daughter. I'm sorry for never once asking about your life, your dreams, your struggles. His voice cracked on the word person. Sharon stood taller, not to forgive immediately, but to acknowledge that this moment was real. The man who hadn't known her name was finally learning to say it right. Second, Maya continued, you use your power the right way. Scholarships for students from working families with priority to marginalized communities. Funding for free language programs at public libraries. Real career paths for service workers in your company so hidden talent can step into the light. Marcus listened without protest. Instead of asking about profit margins, he asked, how many scholarships would make this meaningful? 200, Maya answered firmly. Not a number for headlines, but enough to change lives and hold you accountable to keep going. And third, she raised her last finger, you learn a new language yourself so you know what it feels like to start from zero. Every Tuesday evening you come to the Chicago Public Library. I'll teach you Mandarin. No VIP treatment, no private tutors. You sit at the same plastic tables as everyone else. Marcus felt his carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. 6 months ago, he would have laughed at the absurdity. A billionaire taking orders from a 12-year-old. But today, looking at Maya Washington's serious face, he understood that this wasn't absurd. It was justice. Agreed, he said. I'll be there on Tuesday. Maya nodded, but she didn't offer to shake hands yet. She studied his eyes, searching for sincerity beneath decades of practiced lies. The manuscript has one final message, she said. Would you like to hear it? Marcus nodded. Maya read the last passage aloud. The richest person is the one who enriches others. The strongest is the one who helps the weak to stand. The wisest is the one who knows they were once blind. Sharon broke down then, not from shame, but from release. The invisible weight she'd carried for 8 years seemed to lift from her shoulders as if someone else had finally taken hold of it and helped her carry the load. Marcus turned to look out at the city beyond his windows. Somewhere down there among the streets and lights and ordinary people living ordinary lives was a public library where his fate had just been rewritten by a 12-year-old girl with extraordinary gifts. We're done here, Maya said, closing the manuscript gently. I'll see you Tuesday at the library. Bring a notebook and a pencil. Your homework is to practice the 4 tones of Mandarin and copy 10 basic characters. Marcus smiled for the first time that afternoon. A real smile without cruelty. Understood. He turned to Sharon one last time. Thank you, Sharon, for raising someone who could teach me what money can't buy. As mother and daughter pushed the cleaning cart toward the elevator, the thick carpet no longer swallowed the sound of the wheels. Perhaps because the room's gravity had fundamentally shifted. What weighed most in the 62nd floor office was no longer marble or gold, but the promise a man now had to keep with himself. Tuesday would come. Pages full of mispronunciations awaited. Scholarship programs needed building. Eyes from the country club would narrow in disapproval. But today, in the invisible ledger of Marcus Sterling's life, 3 commitments had been written in ink that could never be erased. And at the bottom of that contract was the signature of the youngest teacher he had ever encountered, Maya Washington, age 12, speaker of 9 languages, reader of ancient wisdom, and the girl who taught a billionaire that true power isn't what you can take from others, but what you can give to them. The lobby of the Chicago Public Library smelled like old books and floor polish. Marcus Sterling stood near the entrance holding a spiral notebook and a #2 pencil he'd bought at the corner drugstore. For the first time in 20 years, he'd arrived somewhere without an assistant, without a driver, without anyone to smooth his path. His phone stayed silent in his pocket as his eyes swept over the study tables. An elderly woman was helping her grandson with math homework. A group of teenagers bent over chemistry problems. Several immigrants typed carefully on outdated computers, treating each word like it might disappear if they moved too quickly. "You came." Maya Washington appeared beside him wearing a Chicago Bulls hoodie and carrying a backpack that had seen better years. She didn't bow to his wealth, but she didn't gloat over his humbling either. She simply pulled out a chair at the table 7 and opened her notebook. "Class rules," she said without preamble. "No special treatment. Phones on silent. Don't interrupt others. Mistakes get corrected, not mocked." Marcus nodded and put his phone away. Maya opened to the first page of her notebook where 4 large tone marks were drawn in black ink. "Ma," she pronounced clearly, her voice carrying to the next table. 4 different tones, 4 different meanings," Marcus repeated after her. "Ma," he said awkwardly, the sound crashing against the quiet atmosphere like a dropped book. Maya smiled, but not mockingly. "Better than most people's first try. 3rd time will be smoother. After that, it gets easier." Sweat gathered on Marcus's forehead despite the library's cool air. At the Union Club, a single mispronunciation would be ammunition for ridicule. Here, mistakes were stepping stones to understanding. At the next table, a man in his 50s wearing a janitor's uniform gave Marcus an encouraging nod when he finally got "Ma" right on the 4th try. "That's Mr. Hassan," Maya said quietly. "My Arabic teacher. He was a professor in Damascus before the war. Now he cleans office buildings at night and teaches here on weekends." Marcus rose awkwardly to greet him, accustomed to shaking hands with senators and CEOs, now fumbling to show respect to a man whose name had never appeared in Forbes. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling." Hassan said, his English careful and dignified. "Here we learn together. Pride is the enemy of knowledge." The words settled into Marcus's chest like truth finding its home. Halfway through the lesson, an older Chinese woman with silver-streaked hair paused at their table. "Mrs. Chen," Maya called. Mr. Sterling pronounced "Ma" correctly today. Mrs. Chen smiled, her eyes crinkling warmly. "Everyone stumbles at first. What matters is stumbling in the right direction." Marcus found himself chuckling. His entire life had been spent climbing over others to avoid falling. Tonight, he was learning how to fall gracefully. At the end of the hour, Maya assigned homework. 10 basic characters, 5 simple greetings, 20 repetitions of the 4 tones. Same time next Tuesday, table 7. If you miss class, you make it up by volunteering to help with the children's reading program. Marcus nodded. He looked around the modest library, thinking of his office where each chair cost more than most people's monthly salary. Here, in this humble space, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, the safety of being allowed to be weak, to struggle to learn. The next morning, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. On the conference room screen, instead of profit charts, were 4 simple words: scholarships, libraries, career paths, listening. The room buzzed with confusion. CFO David Park frowned. "What's the bottom line? Impact shareholders want to know how this affects earnings." Marcus answered without hesitation. 200 full scholarships for students from working families, long-term funding for 12 library branches across Chicago, career pathways so custodial staff can transition to operations maintenance and management. Results measured in retention innovation and reputation. The room shifted uncomfortably. VP of Human Resources. Rebecca Liu swallowed hard. Who will oversee these programs? Marcus turned toward the door. Sharon Washington. The room fell silent, then erupted in gasps as Sharon entered, not with cleaning supplies but with a leather portfolio. On its cover, written in her careful handwriting, Dignity, Opportunity, Growth, Change. She spoke without PowerPoint slides or executive jargon. Respect starts with learning people's names correctly. Next step is listening without defensiveness. Then we fix systems, processes, and policies that hold people back. Opportunity must come with mentorship and support. A murmur rose from the back of the room. Isn't this reverse discrimination? Marcus heard it clearly. He didn't ignore it. Anyone who questions this policy is invited to tonight's listening session. Sit at the same table with Sharon and Maya. Hear their stories before judging the solution. That afternoon, chairs were arranged in a circle instead of around the polished conference table. Software engineers, security guards, maintenance workers, and executives sat as equals while Maya facilitated with questions that cut straight to the heart of things. "When have you felt invisible at work?" she asked. An Indian software developer hesitated, then spoke about colleagues mocking his accent during presentations. A Latina cleaning woman shared that she'd been called the girl for 3 years, never once by her actual name. A white manager admitted he'd never thought about how his casual comments might affect others. "The issue isn't intent," Maya said calmly when the manager tried to defend himself. "It's impact. From now on, we use people's real names. If you slip up, correct yourself immediately. No excuses." By evening, anonymous comments appeared on the company message board. Some supportive, others hostile. One read, "Tuesday night Mandarin with the janitor's kid. When does this become mandatory?" Marcus responded publicly, "We don't mandate language learning. We mandate respect. Anyone calling a child the janitor's kid needs to relearn how to speak about people." The message sparked heated debate. Some thanked him, others muttered about political correctness. Marcus didn't delete the arguments. Instead, he scheduled more listening sessions. Sharon kept time. Maya asked questions. Hassan and Mrs. Chen observed quietly. By the third session, people understood. This wasn't favoritism or charity. It was correction, bringing the scales back into balance. But pushback came from outside, too. A business blog published an article, "Sterling Dynamics Goes Woke, CEO Takes Mandarin Lessons from Cleaning Lady's Daughter." The comments section filled with racist venom targeting Maya and Sharon. Marcus read every word, his jaw clenching tighter with each slur. He sent a company-wide email. When you challenge injustice, it screams. The screaming proves you're hitting the right target. Keep doing the work. On Tuesday night, Marcus returned to Table 7. Maya checked his homework like a real teacher. "Where are the 10 characters?" Marcus showed a page covered in careful strokes. Maya gave a small nod of approval, enough to make the student want to continue learning. For an hour, they wrestled with pronunciation and meaning. Each time Marcus got something right, Mrs. Chen winked encouragement from the next table. Each time he stumbled, Hassan whispered, "Slow down. Breathe through it." At the lesson's end, Maya packed her backpack and looked at Marcus seriously. "Next week, we start reading simple sentences. You'll make mistakes and have to start over many times. That's normal." Marcus smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. "Turns out, success has different tones, too. I've been pronouncing it wrong my whole life." Maya slung her backpack over her shoulder and tapped his notebook lightly. "Tomorrow at the office, there will still be difficult conversations. But if you practice one sound correctly at a time, eventually it becomes a sentence." Night fell over Chicago. The 62nd floor of Sterling Dynamics still glowed with lights, but for Marcus the warm fluorescence of the library felt more like home. He realized that power isn't lost when you learn to say you're sorry. It just shifts from the laughter that tears others down to the nods that lift them up. Friday noon at the Union Club. Dark wood paneling, burgundy leather chairs, crystal glasses catching light like captured rainbows. Bradley Walsh Hedge Funds. Sebastian Pierce Pharmaceuticals. Nathan Cross Telecommunications. They sat around the mahogany table, their eyes trained to measure people by stock prices and profit margins. Bradley lifted his scotch glass with deliberate slowness. "I hear you're bringing social justice to Sterling Dynamics, taking language lessons at the public library, promoting some black janitor to management." Each word was chosen like ammunition designed to wound. Marcus set his glass down steadily. "Her name is Sharon Washington. She heads our human development program designing real career pathways. And I'm learning Mandarin from my teacher Maya Washington. She's 12 years old and speaks 9 languages. Sebastian scoffed. Is this performance art, or are you preparing to sell out to Chinese investors? Nathan added, Don't kid yourself, Marcus. Real talent doesn't come from basements and public schools. Marcus didn't flush red or raise his voice. 6 months ago, he would have laughed along with them, would have competed to make the cruelest joke. Today, he spoke with the quiet confidence of someone who had discovered something more valuable than their approval. Dr. Hassan was a professor of Arabic literature in Damascus. Mrs. Chen chaired an economics department in Beijing. They teach in libraries because of wars and visas and bureaucracy, not because they're lesser than us. It took me 55 years to figure that out. Bradley set his glass down with a sharp clink. You're weakening our position. These virtue-signaling stunts make investors nervous. Marcus smiled, and for the first time in their 20-year friendship, it held no cruelty. If investors oppose respect and human development, maybe Sterling Dynamics isn't the right investment for them. Choose a side, Sebastian said, his voice hardening. Adjust course by next week, or you're out of this circle. Marcus stood up, his movements calm and deliberate. I'll save you the trouble. I'm leaving now. You can keep your circle. I found a better one. He walked away without looking back. Behind him, someone muttered, Complete lunatic. A stone dropped on carpet, making no sound at all. Monday, quarterly shareholders meeting. Charts and graphs filled the screens while Marcus faced a room full of suits and skeptical stares. CFO David Park presented conservative forecasts, his voice steady but his eyes worried. A shareholder in the third row raised her hand. We're hearing about increased costs from scholarships and library funding. What about profit margins? Marcus didn't dodge the question. Yes, costs increased initially, but employee turnover dropped 38%. Workplace injuries fell by half. Our job application rate doubled because of our reputation. The most qualified candidates want to work for companies that invest in people. Another shareholder frowned. That could be correlation, not causation. Marcus nodded calmly. Agreed, so let's test it scientifically. 2 divisions will implement the full program. 2 will maintain current policies. 6 months of data will tell us the truth. I'm betting on people. Mid-meeting, an aide whispered urgently in Marcus's ear. He excused himself and walked quickly to the lobby. The scholarship announcement poster had been defaced with black marker. Crude drawings and the words, Know Your Place, were scrawled across Maya Washington's photo. No slurs, but the message was clear skin color determined worth. Security looked flustered. Employees whispered among themselves. Sharon stood near the poster, pale but straight-backed chin raised defiantly. Maya arrived seconds later, stopping short when she saw the damage. She didn't cry or shout. She pulled out her phone, took a photo, then turned to the gathering crowd. We do 2 things, she announced clearly. 1, we clean this up. Hate doesn't get to stay on a wall celebrating opportunity. 2, we don't clean it in silence. Marcus nodded and called for cleaning supplies while setting up a portable microphone. Everyone, he said, his voice carrying through the lobby. Here, we call people by their real names and we fix what's broken. This attack targets Sharon Washington, Maya Washington, and anyone who believes education should be available to all. A middle-level manager stepped forward, his face flushed with shame. I did it, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I was angry about all the changes. I didn't mean to be racist, Sharon looked at him without shouting or accusing. Intent doesn't erase impact. I hear your fear about change, but your security doesn't come from pushing me down. Marcus suspended the man for 3 weeks without pay, required him to attend bias training, and demanded a public apology that Sharon and Maya would have to accept before he could return to work. The man nodded, tears in his eyes. I am truly sorry, he said, looking directly at Sharon for the first time. I was wrong. Sharon gave a small nod. I hear you. The graffiti was cleaned immediately, but Marcus ordered the poster to be reprinted with a new caption. Defaced, restored, damage remembered. Maya added names of those who helped clean janitorial staff security team and the person who confessed. Heads nodded throughout the lobby. Justice didn't erase the wrongdoer, it included them in the healing. Marcus returned to the shareholders' meeting 20 minutes later. "Apologies for the interruption," he told the room. "We just handled a crisis downstairs. It didn't break our business model, it strengthened our trust model." One senior shareholder, gray-haired and stern until that moment, spoke slowly. "I despise empty gestures, but if you're building a workplace where janitors and executives solve problems together, I'll keep my investment for the long term." That evening, Marcus returned to the library. Maya opened a new lesson with a short Chinese passage about perseverance. Marcus stumbled through it twice, then read it correctly. "Good," Maya smiled. "Tomorrow are the first scholarship interviews. Want to sit on the panel, not to judge, just to listen." Marcus nodded. "I've talked too much in my life. Time to hear other people's stories." That night, he walked through his office building, seeing it with new eyes. Where million-dollar paintings once hung, photographs now lined the walls. Hassan teaching Arabic to a circle of students. Mrs. Chen smiling behind stacks of Chinese books. A young Latina girl clutching her scholarship acceptance letter. Sharon facilitating a team meeting. Marcus dimmed the lights slowly. The atmosphere softened around him. Downstairs, the faint stain on the scholarship poster, deliberately not scrubbed completely away, reminded him that this work would always leave marks. Perhaps keeping scars to remember was the most important thing of all to prevent sliding back into the darkness of thinking he stood above other people. Before locking up, Marcus wrote in his notebook, "Learning people's language is harder than learning Mandarin, but mastering both is how you really read the world." He closed the notebook gently. Tomorrow, voices of scholarship applicants would fill the room like fresh air, and in the middle of it all, a pencil waited for him to write the first words of a completely rewritten life. The makeshift interview room was set up in the building's community space. Folding chairs, white tablecloths, paper cups for water, handwritten name tags. Sharon Washington coordinated, while a diverse panel sat ready: two young managers, a veteran engineer, Dr. Hassan, Mrs. Chen, and Maya at the center, despite being the youngest. Marcus Sterling sat in the back with simple instructions written by Maya. "Listen, don't interrupt, don't judge." The first candidate, Sophia Rivera from the South Side, carried a folder of bilingual poetry. "I wrote these while waiting for my mom to finish her cleaning shift," she said, nervously touching a small cross necklace. Maya asked gently, "When have you felt invisible?" Sophia's voice trembled as she recalled a teacher telling her, "Your accent is charming, dear," then giving her poor grades for incorrect grammar. When Dr. Hassan asked her to read one poem, the entire panel fell silent. Marcus sat motionless, realizing talent had been flowing past him for decades without golden frames to announce its presence. The second candidate, Jamal Carter from Englewood, brought a robot built from recycled electronics. "I love the L train," he said, eyes lighting up. "I want to study transportation engineering." When Maya asked about overcoming obstacles, Jamal grinned. "I applied for an unpaid internship once. They told me my hoodie wasn't professional. So I went home, coded a Python simulation of their brake system, and emailed it back. Next interview, they offered me the position." The third candidate, Emma Rodriguez from Pilsen, carried notebooks filled with precise calculations. Her father had died in a construction accident. "I work at the grocery store after school," she said quietly. "I'm not good with speeches, but I show up every day." Maya nodded, marking dedication and perseverance. The scholarships weren't limited to one background. They sought potential that society had overlooked. Mid-afternoon, a blonde girl entered with her mother, trailing behind. Ashley Green carried a resume that gleamed private school model UN European summer programs. Outside the room, CFO David Park texted his assistant, "Flag this one for approval." Sharon caught the signal but didn't change procedure. Maya handed out blind review packets with names and addresses hidden, leaving only essays and evidence of effort. Ashley spoke confidently, but when Maya asked, When have you felt invisible? She hesitated. I never really thought about that. Her grades were perfect, her experiences polished, but depth was missing. During the break, David approached Sharon with barely concealed frustration. "You're rejecting qualified candidates because of reverse bias," he said quietly. Sharon kept her voice level. "We're conducting blind reviews. If she's the strongest candidate, her file will speak for itself." David bristled but held back, remembering the listening sessions from previous weeks. As he turned away, Maya slipped a note onto the table. "Everyone wants a side door. Fairness is a straight line." David read it, pocketed it, and said nothing more. 2 days later, 327 applications had been distilled into 200 awards. The final list reflected Chicago's diversity: Black, Latino, Asian working-class white children of mechanics, nurses, bus drivers, and restaurant workers. Maya proposed one binding condition: each scholarship came with 10 hours monthly of community service at libraries or mentoring programs. The award ceremony was held in Sterling Dynamics Auditorium. No corporate backdrop, just a simple wooden stage with black curtains and a row of microphones. At the entrance, a security guard accidentally directed a father in work clothes toward the service entrance. Sharon appeared immediately. "There's no separate entrance here. Please come through the main door." The man smiled gratefully, straightening his shoulders. Press attended the ceremony. A reporter asked Marcus, "Is this affirmative action by another name?" Marcus started to answer but looked to Maya. She stepped forward with the composure of someone 3 times her age. "Equality is giving everyone the same shoes. Equity is making sure they fit. These scholarships measure the student first, then provide support that matches their needs. No one is chosen for skin color. Everyone is chosen for potential that poverty and prejudice usually hide." The room murmured approval. Marcus watched Maya, understanding why his Tuesday night lessons required such careful attention to tone and meaning. Names were called across the stage. Sophia Rivera walked forward while her mother wept in the audience. Jamal Carter held up his robot as the room erupted in applause. Emma Rodriguez whispered, "Thank you," and clutched her certificate like the lifeline it represented. In the back row, David Park sat quietly, remembering his own father, who had mopped hospital floors before becoming a supervisor. Perhaps, in his fear of losing status, he had forgotten his family's humble path. He typed a text message he never sent, "I was wrong about the tone." Afterward, a television crew requested interviews. A reporter asked Maya, "You're only 12. Why teach a CEO?" Maya answered simply, "Because he wanted to learn. And because someone who knows how to say sorry deserves the chance to do better." Marcus chuckled softly. It was the best public relations line he'd ever heard, except it wasn't PR at all. That night, as the elevator carried Marcus and Sharon down to the lobby, they paused at the framed poster, "Defaced repaired stain, kept to remember." "Tomorrow I meet with the board of directors," Marcus said. "They want harder data." Sharon nodded. "We'll bring measurable stories. Reduced turnover mentoring hours, workers enrolled in night classes, career paths opened. The metrics of trust are repeated actions." Marcus stepped outside into Chicago's evening air. Among the city's noise and traffic, the silence of tonight's auditorium had been the truest sound he'd heard in years. The silence after each yes from Maya, after each scholarship name called, after each step away from the yellowed pages on the 60th floor where his old life had ended. The story had changed from personal cruelty to institutional healing, signed by the trembling hand of a once arrogant man and the steady script of a girl who knew how to read both words and the world itself. 1 year later, the 60th floor of Sterling Dynamics looked nothing like the marble mausoleum it once was. The imposing granite desk had been replaced by a round wooden table. The walls displayed photographs of real people: Dr. Hassan at a chalkboard covered in Arabic script, Mrs. Chen surrounded by stacks of Chinese literature, Sophia reading poetry to a packed auditorium, Jamal presenting his transportation innovations to city planners. At the main elevator, a small plaque read simply, "No side doors here." Sharon Washington entered the boardroom carrying a folder instead of a mop bucket. She didn't use PowerPoint presentations or corporate buzzwords. She told the story in plain language that anyone could understand. Months 1 through 3, she began, implementing correct name usage became mandatory. Name tags show preferred names. Email signatures updated. I don't know how to pronounce it is no longer acceptable. Marcus took notes while CFO David Park sat quietly, his own notebook open. 6 months earlier, he had removed himself from all hiring committees for 1 year, acknowledging his unconscious biases. Months 4 through 6. Sharon continued. Mandatory listening circles for all management. 12 people per session chairs arranged in a circle, no interruptions allowed, no defensive explanations permitted. The room listened intently. These weren't theoretical concepts anymore, but lived experiences that had measurably changed their workplace culture. Months 7 through 12, career pathways from custodial to operations associate with evening library classes counted as professional development. Ongoing mentorship between employees and scholarship students 1 hour per week, no exceptions. David Park raised his hand. I'd like to add that I'm requesting to rejoin selection committees, but only in an advisory role on impact measurement. I want to help, not control. The room's silence felt like breathing space room for a man to place himself correctly in the larger picture. To prevent the new culture from becoming empty slogans, Maya had proposed a simple code posted in every meeting room. 3 sentences for respect. 1. Say the right name. My name is Gyu. I prefer to be called Sharon. 2. Listen responsibly. I heard you say Hawoon. Here's how it affects me, my team. 3. Empower multiplication. What I can do this week is Ru. I need Woog to join me. In practice, the code transformed daily interactions. During a technical meeting, when a manager carelessly said, "Speak proper English," an Indian engineer calmly replied using the framework. 1. My name is Anil, pronounced Anil. 2. I heard you say proper English. It made me feel diminished even though I'm performing my job correctly. 3. This week, I'll host a session on clear technical writing. I hope you'll attend with specific questions. No shouting, just behavior corrected through structure. In the lobby, when a new security guard mistakenly called Sharon the cleaning lady, she didn't scold. Instead, 1. I am Sharon Washington, Human Development Director. 2. I heard cleaning lady, which hurt because that's how people dismissed me for 8 years, like I was invisible. 3. This week, I'll lead orientation for security staff on respectful address. Would you like to attend? The guard blushed, nodded, and the following week shared his own story about misnaming patients during his previous hospital job. Maya expanded the language program throughout Chicago. Tuesday nights at the library now featured Language Commons, where service workers practiced professional emails with volunteer tutors. The whiteboard read, "Right to respect the reader." Sophia ran Friday bilingual poetry nights. Jamal opened a weekend electronics lab for neighborhood kids. Emma taught Excel to working parents. Mrs. Chen organized Saturday morning mother-child Mandarin classes. Multiplication was happening organically, spreading beyond anything Marcus had imagined. But resistance persisted in subtler forms. One morning, a group of Black and Latina mothers arrived for the family language class, and a rideshare driver sneered, "You sure you're on the right floor?" implying they had wandered into a space not meant for them. Maya didn't argue or lecture. She invited him to observe the class for 5 minutes. Mrs. Chen had him help distribute vocabulary cards while mothers and children practiced together. One mom looked up and said, "Thank you for helping us." As he left, Maya handed him the 3-sentence framework card. He read it, sighed, and said, "Old habits. Can I help again next week?" The rideshare company retrained their driver team that same week. Repeated corrections slowly became habits. Meanwhile, Marcus faced pressure from the financial markets. A major retail client threatened to cancel their contract, citing concerns about political activism interfering with business focus. Marcus's team didn't respond with glossy marketing materials. They presented measurable data error rates down response times faster due to improved communication protocols, customer satisfaction, Up recruitment costs, lower due to employee retention. We invest in trust because it produces better results, Marcus told the client. If you want a vendor focused on short-term cost-cutting, we're not the right fit. If you want a partner built for long-term reliability, we are. They renewed the contract not from sympathy but from logic. The round table policy was implemented company-wide. Every meeting used circular seating arrangements, no head of table positioning. Each meeting ended with 3 written commitments following the framework. Initial skepticism gave way to results. Meeting times decreased 18%, unresolved tasks dropped 25%. David Park admitted, "When we call things by their real names, decisions happen faster." Another test came when a meme circulated on the company messaging system. Someone had created a mocking image of Maya with the caption, "Rent a genius by the hour." Not explicitly racist, but toxic in its implications. Investigation traced it to a junior analyst. Under the new policies, discipline included repair 2 weeks unpaid suspension attendance at 3 listening circles, a 1,000-word reflection on microaggression impact, and co-authoring with Maya. A guide titled, "How to Joke Without Wounding." The analyst stood at the company microphone, voice shaking. "I thought it was harmless humor. I didn't understand the damage. I'm sorry." The guide became standard orientation material. At the New Jersey facility, the framework was translated into Spanish and Portuguese. A Latina worker suggested pronunciation guide name tags with phonetic spelling. Within 3 weeks, mispronunciations dropped significantly, while survey scores for "I feel respected" rose measurably. "Saying names correctly doesn't cost time," Sharon observed. "Saying them wrong costs time to repair relationships." By month 12, Marcus had replaced his CEO office sign with a simple wooden plaque, "Round Table Room." Below it, a small piece of the original defaced poster remained visible, intentionally preserved. Visitors asked about it. Marcus explained, "We keep the stain to remember that respect requires constant attention." At a quarterly town hall, a young black engineer stood up. "I left my previous job because of racial microaggressions. Here for the first time, I see a simple system that takes the poison out of daily interactions. Thank you for the 3-sentence framework." Applause followed, not thunderous but steady, like trust being built one interaction at a time. At day's end, Marcus returned to table 7 at the library. Maya handed him 10 new Chinese characters to practice. He stumbled, tried again, got most of them right. "Tone 2, extend it longer," Mrs. Chen noted from the next table. Hassan called from across the room. "Every mistake teaches something." Marcus wrote in his notebook, "Reading people correctly is as difficult as reading tones correctly, but with practice, both become natural." Sharon watched through the library window and nodded approvingly. Culture doesn't emerge from speeches or posters. It grows gradually through small, repeated actions. 3 principles had become the foundation: name, listen, empower. They were also the 3 basic elements needed to read any organization correctly, to transform it from a place where people hide their talents to a place where they multiply them. 2 years after the manuscript reading in the 60th floor office, the Sharon Washington Foundation for Human Dignity released its first comprehensive report. The numbers weren't flashy, but they carried the weight of transformed lives. 24 libraries across Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, and Cleveland now hosted Language Commons programs. 4,800 regular participants, 68% service workers, 24% parents, 8% recent immigrants. 400 scholarships awarded up from the original 200, with 92% maintaining strong academic performance and 100% completing their community service requirements. At Sterling Dynamics, custodial staff turnover had dropped 42%. Workplace injuries were down 51%. Internal satisfaction scores rose 28 points. Job applications from qualified candidates doubled year over year. Marcus stood backstage at Chicago's main library auditorium, adjusting his microphone before the first graduation ceremony for the Service to Operations career pathway. 37 employees who had once pushed mop buckets now carried certificates in safety management, operations, coordination, and team leadership. A Salvadoran father wiped tears from his eyes as he told the audience, "For the first time, my daughter saw my name printed on a diploma instead of a time card." The auditorium rose in sustained applause. Sharon handed out certificates pronouncing each name with careful respect. Every name represented a life changed, a family lifted, a community strengthened. In the side seating, David Park attended with his daughter Ashley, who had spent the past year mentoring 2 students from Bronx community colleges. "I learn more when I teach than when I study," Ashley told Maya during a break, her earlier entitlement replaced by genuine humility. Maya grinned back. "Teaching is learning twice." In the back row sat Bradley Walsh, Marcus's former friend from the Union Club. Without cameras or publicity, he quietly passed Marcus a handwritten note. "I want to anonymously fund $2 million for expanding the program to Detroit. Not because I lost an argument, because I finally started listening." Marcus wrote back, "Welcome to the round table." The foundation had formalized partnerships with Northwestern University of Chicago and DePaul University for community college credit. Professors ventured beyond campus gates to teach in libraries and community centers. Classes were graded seriously, learners received official transcripts, and library cards functioned as student IDs. A philosophy professor remarked, "We teach theories on campus. In the libraries, we watch theories become human." Media coverage had shifted from skeptical to respectful. The Chicago Tribune, which had initially mocked the program, published a mild correction acknowledging measurable community impact. Not a full apology, but enough to change the conversation. More importantly, participants found their voices. A Jamaican mother wrote to the foundation, "I sent my first confident email to my son's teacher thanks to the writing class. My son said, 'Mom, I'm proud of you.' That meant everything." At Sterling Dynamics, the photography wall had expanded to fill an entire corridor. Mentoring pairs working together, name pronunciation guides in 7 languages, no side doors signs in every lobby entrance. The 3-sentence framework had been adopted by 2 supplier companies and 1 competitor, all reporting improved workplace culture. Maya, now 14, still attended public school and carried her worn backpack to Tuesday evening library sessions. A reporter asked her, "What do you want to become?" She answered without hesitation, "I want to become someone who gets important work done regardless of the title. Names matter when they're used to show respect, not when they're used to build walls." One afternoon, Marcus brought Maya and Sharon to the 60th floor, now called the Round Table Room, to sign documents transferring operational control of the foundation to an independent board. "I'm stepping down as foundation chair," Marcus announced. "Sharon becomes CEO. The board can override any proposal I make." Sharon looked at him directly. "And you remain at the round table each week as an equal member, not as the boss." Marcus nodded. Learning to let go had been as difficult as learning Mandarin tones, but equally necessary. Before the signing, Maya asked to rehang one artifact to the framed poster that had been defaced and restored with its caption, "Defaced, repaired stain, kept to remember." Beside it, she placed a handwritten copy of the 3-sentence framework. At the signing ceremony, she read aloud, "1. Say each other's names that opens the door. 2. Listen responsibly that builds the bridge. 3. Empower multiplication that creates the path. Whoever follows these 3 steps will find their way to each other." That evening, the auditorium filled for the annual scholarship graduation. Under warm, yellow lighting, Marcus gave a brief speech that Maya had edited down to essential points. "I once misread the music of life. I thought wealth meant wisdom, power meant worth. A 14-year-old girl in a library taught me that reading people correctly is the foundation of everything else. Thank you to my teachers Sharon Maya Hassan, Chen Sophia, and to the mistakes that forced me to learn." After the ceremony, a group of scholarship recipients approached Maya. "We want to bring Language Commons to Houston and Phoenix." Maya didn't make promises lightly. She pulled out a detailed checklist. Partner libraries confirmed core teaching volunteers, identified minimum funding, secured impact measurement systems ready. She ended with her consistent requirement: no corporate logos in classrooms, only students' names on the walls. Marcus's final phone call that night was to Jamal's mother. She cried, telling him that Jamal had been accepted to Northwestern's transportation engineering program with a full scholarship. "Nothing's guaranteed yet," she said through tears, "but the road is finally open." Marcus smiled as he hung up. Through the library window across the street, he could see Table 7, where Sharon was reviewing listening session notes while Maya helped a new student practice Mandarin pronunciation. Table 7 didn't belong to him. It belonged to anyone willing to sit down and learn. Late that night, Marcus opened his grid notebook to write his final entry of the year. True wealth is making others rich. True strength is helping others stand. True wisdom is knowing you were once blind and keeping the stain to remember. He closed the notebook gently. Chicago's lights stretched to the horizon, wind pushing clouds across the lake. In the library hall, custodial staff quietly stacked chairs and wiped tables. A young worker paused at the framed poster, defaced, repaired stain. Kept to remember, took a photo and sent it to his mother with the message, "They call me by my real name at work." Tomorrow, multiplication would continue. 1 hour of mentoring, 1 correctly pronounced greeting, 1 decision to walk through the front door instead of looking for shortcuts. No dramatic finale, just the long work of building a better world, 1 interaction at a time. And on that long road, the steady voice of a 14-year-old girl kept echoing, reading words correctly, reading people correctly, reading society correctly, that's the real education. The stain on the wall, preserved deliberately, would forever remind everyone that dignity isn't declared once but practiced daily. That respect isn't a policy but a choice made new each morning. And so runs the journey from cruelty on the 60th floor to wisdom at a library table where a girl who spoke 9 languages taught a billionaire that true power lies not in what you can take from others, but in what you can give to help them rise. What about you? If you witnessed someone being dismissed because of their background, would you have the courage to speak up? If you held power, would you use it to lift others or protect yourself? Share your thoughts below. If this story moved you, hit like, share it forward, and subscribe for more stories about the quiet heroes changing our world 1 conversation at a time. Because sometimes the most powerful words aren't shouted from stages, they're whispered across library tables by those brave enough to teach and humble enough to learn.